How's it going, guys? Today we're going to go over what my garden looked like over the last couple of years and how it has completely transformed. Sometimes I forget where we started with this place, and I feel discouraged, and I think sometimes it's good to look back to see and appreciate how far you've come in a space. And the reason that I started this whole YouTube channel and posting on social media was honestly because I knew I was going to forget where this place started. And I wanted to be able to really look back and see all of the crazy projects that I've done, and see where we started in this whole property and how it evolved over the years. So we're gonna go all the way back to 2019 when we very first looked at this house. A little backstory was we were living in Chico, Northern California, and the campfire up in Paradise had happened and it had taken the entire town. Chico is the closest town to Paradise, and pretty much my entire family was up there. And they got burned out. They ended up, most of them moved in with us. And then during that time, a lot of people were selling their homes in Chico because they were able to get top dollar for it. We were renting, and our landlord was like, hey, I'm selling. So we were in a scramble to find something, and we ended up looking more north. We actually ended up looking all over, and this was one of the very first houses that we came to look at. And I had told Brent, I said, there is no way I'm living here. No chance, absolutely not. Move on to the next one. And we ended up here. So we put offers in on like 5 other homes, and none of them got accepted. Then we put this one in, and I was like, you know what, fine, if I'm gonna be forced to live here, we're gonna lowball, and I wanna ask for a new roof, and I wanna ask for a new HVAC system. And the lady totally went for it. And it was kind of crazy because I totally did not expect her to go for that offer. That was like a wicked offer that we put in, but she didn't counter and she just took it. So we got a killer deal on the place, and now we really love it here. My only problem is I've run out of space for everything in the garden. So let's go back to 2019, this first photo. If I'm looking down, it's because I have the computer right here with all of the photos on this place. So this first photo is March 4th, 2019. This is one of the listing photos, and it is always so crazy for me to see this place. This photo doesn't even do it justice of how bad it looked. So the color of the house in this looks a little more beige and like a brown color, but it was definitely like a purple color, and we actually would call it like a dead mannequin because it looked like fake skin, but like after someone had like died. It was the worst color ever. And then like the trim looked like somebody's like lips. It was all bad. And then you guys see there's the chain link fence, overgrown shrubs. This is just the front of the house, and this is what we saw when we first pulled up to it. This was the listing photo, and that's pretty much exactly how this place looked. It was rough. If we move on, this is actually probably a little bit more of a better representation of the color. You guys can see the purple like door color. It looks like the lips of somebody who's passed away. The lights are all crooked, weird shrubs in the front that have like overgrown a little bit, and like, I don't know, it was just all bad. It was March, so it was wet and damp, and nothing even really looked all that good. It just wasn't that great of a time of year to really be looking at a place. We ended up putting our offer in pretty quickly. I think it was like 15 days after we had seen the house. We had put offers in on other places, and we were only giving 24-hour contingencies to accept or reject the offer. And all the other ones had rejected offers. Like, homes were flying extremely fast that time. You would hear back within like 3 hours, usually 4 hours sometimes, if your offer was accepted on a house, because people were just getting bombarded with offers. So we ended up getting the house the very beginning of April. It was like April like 4th, 5th or something like that. And we spent like 2 weeks straight just cleaning the inside, getting it livable. It was rough. By April 18th, we had a mower. It was just a junker mower. And you guys can see the weeds were tall. There was a shed in the backyard that was totally overgrown. The shed had fallen down. It was not great. Okay, so yeah, you can see this one right here. This is May 6th. And this is the listing photo of the backyard. The shed was still standing at that time, but it had pretty quickly fallen over. I think we had seen it and then it had fallen over because the second time that we had seen it, the shed was already collapsed. And you can see there's like a random tree growing. There used to be a crepe myrtle. You can see there's the privet tree that I absolutely hate. That's still here on the property. There's a crepe myrtle that was basically dead. I think it had like half of one of the branches was still alive at that time. So we pulled that out. And you can see there was nothing there. May 6th, 2019, it's just crazy to me. And then this photo right here, you guys can see, this was probably 2 or 3 days after we had gotten the keys and we had started ripping out everything. We had taken everything down to the subfloor inside the house, and it was pretty bad. But this is the view of the backyard from inside. This is actually a photo that I had shared on my Instagram. And you guys can see, I mean, everything's overgrown. We actually barely knew that there was a sidewalk in the left side, and all the weeds are totally overgrown. And there's a propane tank there. I guess the shed was still up. I don't remember exactly, I guess, when the shed had totally collapsed, but it collapsed at some point pretty quick. It must have been right after we bought the house, because this was 2 or 3 days, maybe 2 days after we had actually gotten the keys, before we did any yard work. This was just like, get the house livable. We have 1 month before we need to be out of our house in Chico and up here on this property. So after that, this photo right here, this is May 4th. And this was just the garbage that we had pulled from around the property. And this was the projects of just trash. I mean, you guys can see the fence on one side is like basically full with garbage, and there was like a walkway. So it was a lot of trash. There was a gate in the side yard, and we kind of went back and forth. There was just so much garbage here. It was insane. It actually gets way worse than this photo right here. So I had been super overwhelmed at this point with everything inside and with like the trash piling up everywhere. We knew that we were gonna end up needing a absolutely massive dumpster to take care of everything. And I decided to start a project that I probably shouldn't have at the time. And it is what is now our aviary, and this was actually our chicken coop at the time. I was like, you know what, we're out here, we have all this property, I want chickens. I'm doing this now. This is something that's gonna bring me a little bit of joy. Working on this house right now was not bringing me joy. I was still in the mode of, I don't wanna be here, I hate this house. But I was determined to make it somewhere that I was going to love being and enjoy being, and making a little beautiful chicken coop. And because I'm the person I am, it had to be extra and extravagant. I had to have corbels on it, and it had to be made out of 2x4s, and it had to be able to have plants hanging on it. And so I went and I bought a ton of 2x4s, and I just started building. And I got like halfway done, and then Brent had came home from work, and he was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "I am building this, and I don't want your help because I don't want to hear from you." And then I quickly asked for his help. But I got this done, and I thought it was so beautiful, and I loved it. And then we got chickens, and it was so sweet, and we loved having it. And then after a while, that ended up becoming way too small. There was no run for the chickens. It was just that area. And so now that is our aviary. And then you can see this right here. This is May 13th. This is the back of the house. And we had siding areas that needed to be replaced. There was areas that did have dry rot. There was also some termite damage to some places. And there was nothing in the ground. You guys can see the old fence that's right there. The property really was nothing special. It was a very blank canvas that needed, it actually wasn't even a blank canvas. It was like a messed up canvas that needed work to become a blank canvas. So we got it there. We got it there. This right here was probably one of the most overwhelming photos of the property. This was July 31st of 2019. So April, May, June, July, we had been here for 4 months, and the trash in the side yard from projects had just piled up. This ended up being everything. This was some kitchen cabinets. This was the HVAC, the old HVAC system. This was some ducting that was there on the property. This was that shed that had fallen over. This was one of the fences had totally fallen over, and so we had to replace that. This was the wood from that. It was just where everything went that wasn't just like household garbage. This was like the trash from projects and things that were just like garbage around the property. So it was about 10 feet wide and about 24 feet long of trash and 6 feet tall. So a lot of garbage, and it all had to be removed. So you can see there's a couple photos I took of them slowly getting the trash removed. It was the baseboards, the flooring, it was pretty much everything, and they got it cleared out down to absolutely nothing. They ended up taking that fence down that was right there too. It was rickety, it was garbage. And then we put up the fence that you guys can see right there in the very back of it. That was just to keep the dogs safe, keep the dogs from going through that area. It was, for some reason they decided they wanted to like climb the trash piles. So pretty quickly after that, I had actually painted the house and done a few random projects in between. I kind of stopped taking photos and filming, and I really wish that I had taken more photos and filmed a little bit more. But we had put up some gutters and we had done them ourselves. They weren't the best. It was just, I was tired of getting rained on, and they worked, so it was fine. And then we had painted the house. We painted it the same color it is now, white with the black trim, and it was fine. And then this side yard over here where all the trash was one of the very first planting areas that we had done. And so first plants went in the ground really November 27th, 2019 was first plants in the ground. So when I tell you guys our garden is only a couple years old, I mean it. It really is only a couple years old. The end of 2019, things started to get in the ground. So really 2020 is the year that I started planting anything back here. And it pretty much is none of the stuff that you see. None of this was really even in the ground until 2021. So here is the backyard. This is December 17th, 2019. The willow tree is not planted. The shed is the original color. You can see there's our shed right here, right now. But the shed in this photo is the original color that we got it. And you guys can see there's the fence that we had to rebuild, and there's 2 sidewalks and no grass. There was nothing here. This is when we finally got it to the blank space, about a year into the making. This next photo here, this is March 22nd of 2020. I had gotten our big chicken coop finally built in the back area. You can see all of that. And we really we hadn't done anything really in the property. I decided that I wanted to do some vegetables in the garden, and I didn't know where I was going to plant them. I had no clue what I was doing. This is before we even had Freya. And so I had built 2 planter boxes out of scrap wood that we just had from the back fence right there that had gotten tore down. And I just decided to grab some pieces of those wood and I built a planter box, and it worked beautiful. I went and I bought the absolute cheapest potting soil that I could find, and I grew vegetables. It was the first time ever that I had grown vegetables here on this property, or actually it was the first time that I'd really grown anything on this property. In our house in Chico, I had grown maybe like a tomato plant, some basil plants. My grandparents always had a huge, massive garden, but I never grew anything. I just ate the vegetables out of it on both sides of my parents. I was always around it, but I didn't know what I was doing. And so this is first year getting things in the ground. I finally had chickens. I had a vegetable garden. I think I had garlic in here and lettuce. Those were the very first 2 things that I had planted. And both of those crops turned out absolutely amazing. And something so crazy is I have not had a good lettuce crop ever since. So this right here, this is May 22nd, 2020, and the willow tree had not even been planted yet. The shed wasn't painted, nothing was done, and you can see this front area didn't have any lawn. There was nothing. I had finally gotten the back area to grow a little bit, and we had put the picket fence in, and that's when we decided we're gonna plop a willow right here. And then these next photos, these are all June. We had gotten Freya, and she was such a menace in the garden. Anything that I put in the vegetable garden, she decided she didn't like that. She was confused why I left something over here, and she was gonna bring it to me. So we had to build a fence around that area. I had planted a couple squash, I had planted a few cucumbers, I had planted all kinds of things, and pretty much every plant that we had in this area, I'd either started from seed or we got for free. I was on like an extreme budget after we bought the house, and we had totally renovated the inside. So we had painted the shed, we had painted the chicken coop, built the chicken coop out. You guys can see there's like a little walkway. I had this idea of this is going to be kind of like a formal sitting area, and then the side next to it, one side was going to be the vegetable garden, a formal sitting area, and then the chicken coop. And we had 6 chickens. They had an absolutely massive run. It was insane. And we obviously decided to shrink that. I grew loofahs over the chicken coop. That was a really fun project. 2020, nobody else was growing loofahs, and then 2021, all of a sudden, growing loofahs exploded online, and I felt pretty cool because I was ahead of the time. But this was the vegetable garden right here. It was massive. We had, I think, like 40 varieties of tomatoes. I grew corn. I grew squash. I grew pumpkins. I grew everything. I just went like really hard at it, and we ate almost nothing. Turns out we're not really big into vegetables here. So now the vegetable garden is much smaller, and it consists of some berries, a fruit tree, and 2 tomato plants. And I think that's where we're going to keep it. It's small like that. But this is it. So we had finally gotten some things in the ground. I had lined it with plants that I'd gotten for free. Those are all the plants on the outside of that little picket fence. And I was so excited. I loved doing it. And then when it came time to harvest them, I was like, I don't love this. I don't want this much vegetables. We didn't eat a single eggplant that I grew. We didn't eat any of the squash. We didn't eat any of the pumpkins. We didn't eat a lot of it. So it mostly got given away, or it got given to the chickens. So by June 2nd, the willow was fully planted and everything was coming alive. It was really pretty time in the garden, and I loved it. June 6th, we had decided to tear the walkway out in the front and start projects in the front yard. We had no clue what we were doing, and we tore out the first layer of concrete, and there was a second layer right underneath there. And that was really frustrating. But we got through it, and I'm really happy that we ended up tearing it out. You can see right here the property was surrounded by a chain link fence, and we tore out the whole chain link fence. You can see where the old walkway was, and it wasn't centered with the front of the door, and so you would like walk in and you had to jut to the side and then jut to the side again and then go up the stairs, and it was really weird. So we decided to take that out, and we put in this stone walkway that we absolutely love. It's probably one of my favorites. We have the grass growing right through it, and it's really soft. It's really pretty. And then we built the arbor over it pretty quickly after we got this whole section done. And then this right here, this is August of 2020, and this is the seating area. This is where we still sit most of the time. We still have the same dining set. It came from our house in Chico, and we upgraded the area now with a pergola. We planted some arborvitaes. I think in about a year's time after this photo, we planted the arbs there, and we had put a picket fence there. And pretty quickly we took that picket fence down. It didn't work. It was kind of more of a pain to get the lawnmower through and the trash cans through, and it didn't do the best job of even keeping the dogs out of it. So it was fine. It worked for a little bit, and I felt like we finally got the property looking decent and looking really nice. So after that, you can see this is the 4x4s that are in the ground, and the start of the gate and the start of the picket fence in the front yard. We had just gotten the sprinklers in, and we had gotten grass growing in the area. There was absolutely nothing there before. It was just desolate. There was no irrigation. We actually didn't even have a hose bib up front. So we ran water pretty quickly up to the front yard. November 7th of 2020, I had ordered a ton of gravel, and it made a world of difference. It really dressed that front area up. We filled both of the driveways in with the gravel, and it still remains up there to this day, and it's really beautiful. And then after that, we just started like working really hard to get that arbor built. You can see that I put some lattice in there, and I decided to change my mind. The lattice isn't there anymore. It lasted maybe like 2 weeks on there. The arbor is built out of redwood. I wanted it to last forever. I didn't want it to be made out of pine and warp and just to be all bad. By March 2nd of 2021, I decided to get rid of the whole vegetable garden. Like I said, I didn't love it. I enjoyed growing it, but I didn't enjoy any of the vegetables. So I tore out all of that. There was a sidewalk there. I tore out that whole sidewalk, and Brent had no clue. He came home and I was tearing it out. And that's how most projects go around here. So ripped everything out and started with a blank slate again. March 2nd, 2021, I planted 3 birch trees, and this is where our compost sat. And you guys can see this is the start of this side of our property. So west side of our property, this is the start of it. And it didn't start until March 2nd, 2021. So technically our back garden here, this is only 2 years old. I don't know, everything grows really fast, and I'm very lucky here. The soil is very, very healthy. So March 2nd, 2021, I bought this bench right here. I've since painted it white, and it has lasted. I do not bring it inside, and it just sits out here all year round, and it has held up. I think this is probably one of the best investments for our garden. It's pretty cheap. As always, anything that I do mention does get linked down below. But here it is, and it's really crazy to see this photo because, I mean, fence boards were falling off. There was no defined bed. I just started throwing things in the ground. By July 5th, that same year, we had gotten grass to grow. The willow was starting to look good. The shed had been fully painted. You guys can see right behind. We had gotten the canopy that we sit under all the time. You guys can see right behind those two red chairs are the 3 pots. They're now in the very front yard, and one of them is in the side yard. And you can see there's 3 cordyline in there. That's where the cordylines came from. They started out in these containers, and it was nice because they were raised up. I had some creeping Jenny in them. It was really beautiful. It was green and red, and it was really pretty for the time being. After that, this is now August 2nd of 2021. And the grass had filled in completely. We had a fire pit there, and we used that fire pit all the time. I really do miss having a fire pit. I would like to build a very nice fireplace for outdoors here. That is probably my project for this next year. In the next year, by this time, I would like to have an outdoor fireplace. I really miss it. We used it all the time. But you can see I had flowers on both sides of the property. It wasn't much. Things had started to grow, and things had... Sorry, the privet tree is dropping and they're landing in my eye. Things had really started to fill in, and it started to like turn into a little bit of an oasis, and I was really proud of the property at this point, even though there wasn't much. Then you can see here, this is when I decided to take the bed on this side and do a straight run down the length of the property, and you can see a little patch of green halfway through that flower bed, and that is where I had not pulled out the Bermuda grass yet. I have spent, I don't even know, countless hours pulling by hand the Bermuda grass, making sure I get all the roots out. This whole section here was nothing but Bermuda grass, and I hand pulled it for about a week, and I got every little bit out. And same thing with the flower bed over there. And in our sections back here, and technically right here in front of you guys, this is all Bermuda grass, and you guys, I looked like a crackhead. I was vacuuming. I was hand pulling. I looked like a crazy person, but I was going to get rid of this Bermuda grass on the property, and I've pretty much eliminated it. I'm leaving some of it in this front bed just because it does fill in some of the patches. Then come January 28th of 2022, I had finished up the picket fence and finished building the front fence completely. We had painted the arbor, painted the fence, painted everything. It looked really nice. It just looked very clean and simple. I added those 2 concrete pots that had the cordyline in them. I had moved 2 of them to right here in front of the house. You can see them. They now have the arborvitaes in them. They're still there to this day. I just kind of went really hard at planting things that year. So I didn't take much photos, much videos. I think this next photo, this right here, is June 23rd, 2022. And this is the cover photo that I used for the summer garden tour of 2022. So this was just last year. I will link that video down below in the description, and you guys can go watch that, and then you can go watch the garden tour that I did for June this year. So I just did one, and you guys can go watch that and see the comparison, because it has changed tremendously. And I mean, just even my video editing and the quality has changed tremendously. So don't be mad at me if you watch that summer garden tour and it's not like up to par. It was a year ago and I didn't know what I was doing. We had installed lighting, the uplight in the willow tree was there. We hadn't had any of the flower farm. There was a water spigot in the middle of the lawn, which we ended up removing. The fence was still the original color of the wood. None of that had been painted or anything yet. August 25th, 2022, things were just full, and it was hot. It was hot here, it was full. I wasn't planting anything else on the property, and we were just kind of like letting the property be and enjoying it. It had finally felt like it had come into its own. I had started to run out of space at this point, but not completely. Not a whole lot was totally filled in, so I felt like there was a lot of gaps. Plants hadn't fully matured quite yet. where now they are very, very mature. Now, this photo here is September 22nd of 2022. So last year, and you guys can see there was, the lawn was beautiful. The aviary had the new roof on it by this point, and it was really beautiful. The aviary, like I said, was our chicken coop, and it just had a tin roof on it before, and I decided to dress it up, and we built this new roof that it has. Last year was kind of the point that I felt the most proud of the property. I feel like I had my vegetable garden in. I felt like I had plants starting to really get established. Things were kind of coming into their own last year, and it was amazing to watch the transformation happen from 2021 to 2022. It was kind of like in the blink of an eye, things had really started to grow. And even this year, it's really amazing. October 17th, 2022, this was about a week after our wedding time had happened, and the garden had looked its best at this point. It was a lot of work. We finally got it to a point where we were proud of the garden, and like I said, this was after the wedding, so we had put a lot of time and energy into making sure that the garden was really cleaned up. I was pretty selective with plants, but I knew that our wedding was in October, so some things were really starting to actually fizzle out. You guys can see here, this is the side yard for November 10th of 2022, and that is a shocking difference from this photo right here with all of the trash. So it's insane the way that the garden will just kind of come into its own and be something extremely beautiful over the course of just a few short years. We didn't really start our gardening here for about a year until after we bought the property. So 2023, here we are, and I had run out of space in all of the flower beds and decided to take out the lawn. That was something that we decided to do this, it was probably November when I decided to do it. It was after the wedding. I had a whole different plan for this area. And we decided, you know what, we're gonna throw that out the window and we're gonna try this. We're gonna try our hand at flower farming, and I've been really happy with it. I do miss the peacefulness that the lawn brought. The way that the property was set, you would walk in a circle around it and you'd walk behind the willow tree. This is now more for production and not so much a like leisurely stroll around the property. So I do wish that I had maybe done a walkway on the other side of the property, like how there's a walkway here. I think that would have been really nice. But you live and learn, and we'll see what happens next year. So thanks for coming along with me today, guys, and taking a stroll down memory lane on this property. I often forget where this place started and where we came from. The propane tank in the middle of the lawn, the HVAC system, the rotting siding. I forget all of these things, and your brain very much lives in the now moment, and it's sometimes good to reflect and humble yourself a little bit and remind yourself that it's not a race. It's, you're able to enjoy it and appreciate where it is now, because I know that I felt how I feel now about the property. I feel very happy with how it's turned out. I felt the same way once we got all the weeds cleared. I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And then once I got a few plants in, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So going back and looking at old photos sometimes is very important to do. So thanks for hanging out with me today, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. I know that I did a lot. So I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.